I am Jason, 27 years old, and today I finally got the keys to my first home. After working since 16, paying my own way through college and saving every penny, this moment should be pure bliss. Then my phone buzzed. A text from my sister: "Mom and Dad are suing you." The official papers arrived minutes later. The reason? Apparently I stole my sister Melanie's future by buying this house. Let me explain how my own parents ended up taking me to court. Before I dive in, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear more unbelievable true stories. Growing up, my family was what most would call middle class. My dad worked as a manager at a local manufacturing plant, and my mom was a part-time receptionist at a dental office. We never went hungry, but there was not much left over for luxuries either. My sister Melanie came along when I was 5, completing our family of 4 in our modest 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood in Michigan. From early on, I understood my father had strong beliefs about life. Frank Miller was a hardened man who believed the world owed nobody anything. He would often say, "The school of hard knocks is the best teacher," and he applied this philosophy liberally to his parenting. Praise was rare in our household. Getting straight, as was simply doing what you were supposed to do. Achievements were acknowledged with brief nods rather than celebration. My mother Linda was a gentle soul, but ultimately ineffective as a buffer between my father and me. She would offer private words of encouragement when Dad was not around, but never contradicted him directly. "Your father just wants you to be prepared for the real world," she would whisper after particularly harsh criticism from him. In retrospect, I realized she was trapped in her own way, always walking on eggshells around his unpredictable temper. The one true bright spot in our home was my relationship with Melanie. Despite the 5-year gap, we formed a tight bond. I would help her with homework, defend her from neighborhood bullies, and she would look at me with those wide eyes, full of admiration. When things got tense with our parents, we developed our own secret language of sorts, communicating through subtle glances and coded phrases that only we understood. At 16, I started noticing how my parents' attitude toward money was affecting me. Any request for school activity fees or new clothes was met with sighs and lectures about fiscal responsibility, despite the fact that my parents could afford these basics. The message was clear: I was a financial burden. Their material support came without emotional backing, creating an uncomfortable dynamic where I felt both dependent and unwanted. That summer, I made a decision that would alter my life trajectory. The local bakery, Harmon's, had a "Help Wanted" sign in the window. Without telling my parents, I walked in and asked for an application. Mr. Harmon, a balding man in his 50s with flour perpetually dusting his forearms, seemed surprised to see someone my age inquiring. "School's still in session, son. Why are you looking for work now?" he asked, wiping his hands on his apron. "I want to start saving for college," I replied, which was partly true. The deeper reason was independence, but that seemed too personal to share with a stranger. Mr. Harmon studied me for a moment before handing me an application. "Fill this out and we will talk about hours that will not interfere with your schoolwork." That conversation marked the beginning of my relationship with the first adult who would become a true mentor in my life. Mr. Harmon hired me for weekend shifts and a few hours after school. The work was physically demanding: heavy flour bags to lift, early morning shifts that started at 4:30 a.m., and constant cleaning. But there was something deeply satisfying about seeing the results of my labor, both in the fresh bread we produced and in the paycheck I received every 2 weeks. Balancing work and school proved challenging. I would often finish homework late into the night, catching just a few hours of sleep before heading to the bakery for morning shifts. My grades dipped slightly that first semester, triggering a stern lecture from my father about priorities. What he failed to recognize was that I was learning more from my job than just how to make bread. Mr. Harmon taught me about punctuality, accountability, and the satisfaction of earning your own way. "The first dollar you earn yourself is worth 10 given to you," he told me, while teaching me how to properly knead dough. "It builds something inside you that nobody can take away." My first paycheck was modest, but it represented freedom. I opened a bank account without my parents' knowledge, using Mr. Harmon as my adult cosigner. Every dollar I saved felt like a brick in the foundation of my future independence. While other teenagers spent their money on video games or clothes, I watched my savings grow with quiet determination. When my parents finally discovered I had taken a job, their reaction was predictably lukewarm. My father simply warned, "This better not affect your grades," while my mother fretted about me missing out on being a teenager. Neither acknowledged the initiative it took to secure employment or the responsibility I was showing. Their primary concern was that my job might reflect poorly on them as providers or disrupt the academic success they expected. What they did not understand was that the bakery had become more than just a workplace for me. It was a sanctuary where my efforts were recognized and rewarded. Mr. Harmon would compliment a perfectly shaped loaf or thank me for staying late when another employee called in sick. These small acknowledgments nourished something in me that had been starving at home, a sense that I mattered and my contributions had value. By the end of that first year working, I had saved nearly $3,000 and gained something even more valuable: confidence in my ability to shape my own future. While my parents continued to provide my basic needs, I had created something that was entirely mine, a foundation upon which I would build everything that followed. My junior and senior years of high school established a pattern that would define my approach to life. While maintaining mostly A grades, I continued working at Harmon's Bakery, eventually being promoted to assistant manager on weekend shifts. The promotion came with additional responsibilities and a modest pay increase that I proudly deposited into my growing savings account. Mr. Harmon noticed my dedication to saving and pulled me aside one morning. "Jason, what are you saving for exactly? Most kids your age would have bought a car by now." "College," I replied simply. "And independence." He nodded appreciatively. "Smart man, but make sure you apply for scholarships too. That is free money on the table." His advice led me to the guidance counselor's office, where Miss Patterson helped me navigate the complex world of college applications and financial aid. Unlike my parents, who seemed to expect good grades, without offering guidance about what came after, Miss Patterson actively helped me research schools that aligned with my interests in business and economics. "Your work experience will make your applications stand out," she encouraged. "Make sure to emphasize your responsibilities at the bakery and how you balanced work with academics." Around this time, I received unexpected news that would significantly impact my financial planning. My grandmother, on my mother's side, passed away. While we had never been particularly close due to geographic distance, she had apparently set up small college funds for both Melanie and me before her passing. My portion amounted to $5,000, not enough to cover college expenses, but certainly a meaningful contribution. What struck me was how my parents delivered this news almost as an afterthought. "Your grandmother left you some money for school," my mother mentioned casually during dinner. "We will put it with the rest of your college fund." This was the first I had heard of any college fund, and when I asked for details, my father's vague responses raised red flags. I insisted on having the money deposited directly into my personal account, causing the first major confrontation about my finances. "You do not trust us with your money," my father demanded, his face flushing with anger. "I would just prefer to manage it myself," I replied, trying to keep my voice level. "I have been handling my own savings for almost 2 years now." After a tense standoff, they reluctantly agreed, though the incident created a new layer of tension in our already strained relationship. As application season approached, I threw myself into researching schools. With my solid GPA, work experience, and decent SAT scores, I qualified for several good programs. The University of Pennsylvania's business program particularly appealed to me, offering excellent career placement rates and a curriculum that excited me. When I received my acceptance letter, along with a partial scholarship, I was ecstatic. My father was not. "Pennsylvania, that is ridiculous. The state university is 40 minutes away," he argued when I announced my decision. "You would throw away money on housing and higher tuition when you could live at home for free." What followed was one of the most heated arguments we ever had. My father laid out his expectation that I would attend the local university while continuing to live at home, presenting it as the only financially responsible choice. What he framed as practical advice felt like an attempt to maintain control. "I have been saving for this," I countered. "With my scholarship savings and student loans, I can make it work without asking you for anything. My father's expression hardened. If you choose to waste money on an out-of-state school, do not expect us to bail you out when you run short. Not a single dime. I have never asked you for a dime since I started working, I shot back. And I never will. In that moment, a line was drawn. I would pursue my education on my terms, but I would do it entirely on my own. While many of my classmates received parental support for college, I committed to complete financial independence, a decision born equally of necessity and pride. The night before I left for Pennsylvania, Melanie slipped into my room as I finished packing. At 11 years old, she understood more than our parents gave her credit for. "Are you leaving because of Dad?" she asked, sitting cross-legged on my bed. "No, Squirt," I said, using my nickname for her. "I am leaving because it is the right school for me. But I will visit, and you can call me any time." Her eyes welled with tears. "Who will help me with math homework?" I sat beside her and promised, "I will always be there for you, Mel. Always. We can video chat for homework help, and I will come back for holidays." "Promise you will not forget about me?" she asked in a small voice. "That would be impossible," I assured her, giving her a tight hug. "You are the best thing in this family." As I boarded the bus the next morning, with 2 suitcases containing everything I owned, my parents offered a stiff formal goodbye. But Melanie's tearful wave from the window stayed with me, a reminder of the one relationship in that house, worth preserving at all costs. The transition to college hit me like a freight train. Within my first week at the University of Pennsylvania, I realized that balancing academics work and financial independence would be far more challenging than I had anticipated. My partial scholarship covered about 40% of my tuition, but that left a significant gap that my savings and student loans would need to fill. Additionally, there were living expenses, books, and countless unexpected costs that quickly emerged. I secured 2 jobs within my first month on campus. Mornings and some afternoons I worked at the university coffee shop, brewing endless lattes for sleep-deprived students and professors. On weekends, I landed a position as a teaching assistant for an introductory economics class, which paid less but looked better on my resume and aligned with my major. Between classes, work shifts and studying, sleep became a luxury. I typically operated on 5 hours a night, sometimes less during midterms and finals. The grueling schedule took a physical toll, manifesting in frequent colds and perpetual dark circles under my eyes. My roommate Kyle noticed my exhaustion one night as I returned from a late shift. "Dude, you are working yourself to death," he commented, looking up from his laptop. "My parents send me care packages all the time. You are welcome to whatever they send." Kyle came from a wealthy Connecticut family and could not fully comprehend my situation, but his generosity touched me. He became the first close friend I made at college, despite our different backgrounds. Unlike many of our peers who viewed Kyle as just another rich kid, I saw his genuine kindness and loyalty beneath the privileged exterior. "I appreciate that," I told him, "but I need to make this work on my own." Kyle shrugged. "Stubborn as hell, but I respect it." What Kyle and others did not see was the meticulous financial planning happening behind the scenes. I created detailed spreadsheets, tracking every expense, forecasting costs, and calculating how many hours I needed to work to stay afloat. I learned to buy textbooks used or share with classmates, cook simple meals instead of eating out, and find free campus activities for rare moments of relaxation. When summer arrived, I faced another decision. While many students returned home or took unpaid internships to build their resumes, I needed income. Fortunately, my academic performance had impressed Professor Lewis, who taught business ethics. He recommended me for a paid summer internship at a local financial services company. "It is competitive," he warned, "but you have a strong work ethic and practical experience that many students lack." The internship paid enough to cover my summer housing and allowed me to save a small amount toward the next year's expenses. More importantly, it provided valuable experience in my field and connections that would prove instrumental later. Not returning home meant limited contact with my family. I called Melanie weekly, but conversations with my parents were brief and infrequent. My father would ask perfunctory questions about grades, while my mother would fret about whether I was eating properly. Neither asked about my financial situation, seemingly content to assume I was managing as I had claimed I would. Professor Lewis became an unexpected mentor during this period. In his 60s, with silver hair and perpetually rumpled blazers, he had a reputation for being tough but fair. After working closely during the summer before my junior year, he began inviting me to occasional dinners with his wife at their home. "You remind me of myself," he told me one evening. I worked my way through school too, though tuition was considerably less astronomical back then. During these dinners, he offered advice about career paths, graduate school options, and long-term financial planning that my parents had never provided. He and his wife Margaret treated me with a warmth and interest that felt foreign but welcome. "Success is not just about making money," he often said. "It is about building a life that reflects your values. Remember that when job offers start coming in." By my junior year, I had established a rhythm that, while demanding, was sustainable. My grades placed me in the top 15% of my class, and my work experience was growing increasingly relevant to my future career. I had even managed to set aside a small emergency fund, giving me a sense of security I had never experienced before. During winter break of that year, I finally visited home. The house seemed smaller somehow, and the dynamics unchanged. My father continued to make dismissive comments about fancy schools, while my mother hovered anxiously. The most significant change was in Melanie, now 14, and struggling with the typical challenges of adolescence. I noticed her withdrawn demeanor and declining interest in school, once her favorite place. After dinner one night, I knocked on her bedroom door. "What is going on with school?" Mel, I asked gently after she let me in. She shrugged, picking at a loose thread on her bedspread. "I just do not get math anymore. And some girls have been really mean." Over the next several days, I spent hours helping her with algebra and listening to her social struggles. By the time I returned to Pennsylvania, we had reinstated our old bond stronger than before. I promised to check in more frequently and set up regular video calls to help with homework. "You are smarter than you think," I told her before leaving, "and definitely smarter than those mean girls. Do not let anyone make you believe otherwise." As I boarded the bus back to university, I felt the weight of responsibility for Melanie more acutely than ever before. My own independence was hard-won, but ensuring she had the support to find hers was becoming equally important to me. Graduation day arrived with surprisingly little fanfare. While other students celebrated with elaborate family dinners and gifts, my parents and Melanie attended the ceremony and left shortly after for the 5-hour drive home. Their brief visit was marked by awkward small talk and my father's comments about the unnecessarily fancy campus that had cost so much money. Before leaving, Melanie hugged me fiercely. Now 16, she had blossomed into a thoughtful young woman with aspirations of her own. "I am so proud of you," she whispered, "and I am taking notes on everything you did." That simple acknowledgement meant more than any elaborate celebration could have. The real celebration came later that evening, when Professor Lewis and his wife hosted a small dinner for me and a few other graduating students he had mentored. Kyle was there too, along with some friends from my various campus jobs. In that warm, supportive atmosphere, I felt a sense of accomplishment that had little to do with the diploma itself and everything to do with the journey to earn it. Thanks to my internship connections and Professor Lewis's recommendation, I had secured a position at Albany Financial Advisors, a mid-sized firm with a solid reputation. The starting salary was modest by industry standards, but represented a fortune compared to my college earnings. For the first time, I could envision a future where financial security was not just a distant dream, but an achievable reality. My first priority was creating a plan to tackle my student loans. While many of my peers opted for minimum payments stretched over decades, I was determined to eliminate this debt as quickly as possible. I allocated 50% of my income after necessary living expenses toward loan repayment, a percentage that required continued frugality, but would free me from debt years earlier than standard repayment plans. The transition from student to professional came with unexpected challenges. The corporate culture at Albany was intensely competitive, with recent graduates jockeying for recognition and advancement. While others spent money on designer suits and happy hours to network, I maintained my minimalist lifestyle, channeling resources toward debt repayment and beginning to build investments. 6 months into my new position, I met Rachel Donovan, a fellow analyst who had joined the firm from a competitor. With curly auburn hair and a no-nonsense attitude, she stood out in the predominantly male department. We were assigned to collaborate on a client portfolio review, and her sharp insights and direct communication style immediately impressed me. "You do not play the office politics game much, do you?" she asked bluntly, after we successfully presented our analysis. "I prefer to let my work speak for itself," I replied. She smiled. "Refreshing. Most of the guys here spend more time managing their image than their clients' assets." That initial professional respect evolved into friendship and eventually romance. Rachel came from a background similar to mine, working through college, with minimal family support. She understood my financial priorities, in a way many others could not, never pressuring me to spend on expensive dates or status symbols. I would rather date someone with a plan for the future than someone trying to impress me today. She told me when I apologized for suggesting a budget-friendly dinner option. At work, my methodical approach and strong client relationship skills began to pay dividends. Within 18 months, I received my first promotion, accompanied by a 15% salary increase. Rather than upgrading my lifestyle, I maintained my modest apartment and reliable but unimpressive car, increasing my loan payments, and beginning to save toward a down payment on a home. Throughout this period, I maintained regular contact with Melanie, who was now considering her own college options. During one of our weekly calls, she expressed anxiety about the application process. "Mom and Dad keep saying not to worry about the money, but I overheard them arguing about finances last night," she confided. "I do not want to be a burden." The comment struck a painful chord, echoing my own adolescent fears. "You are never a burden, Mel. Have they talked to you about scholarships or financial aid?" "Not really. Dad just says the local state school is good enough, and that is where I should go." The familiar refrain raised immediate concerns. During my next visit home, I attempted to broach the subject of Melanie's college plans, with my parents offering to help research scholarship opportunities. "We have it handled, my father said dismissively. "She does not need to go to some overpriced school like you did." "I am just offering to help with scholarship applications," I clarified. "There is free money available if you know where to look." My mother interjected nervously. "Your father and I have been saving for Melanie's education. We appreciate your concern, but we do not need your help." Something in their defensive reaction felt off, but I dropped the subject to avoid another confrontation. Later that evening, Melanie snuck into the guest room where I was staying. "Can you help me with applications anyway?" she asked. "I really want to at least try for some better schools." Over the next several months, I secretly assisted Melanie with college applications, scholarship essays, and financial aid forms. We developed a system of late-night video calls and encrypted document sharing that felt reminiscent of our childhood secret communications. I was impressed by her academic achievements and extracurricular activities, which made her a strong candidate for several competitive programs. As Melanie's college journey unfolded, my own career continued to advance. Rachel and I grew closer, eventually moving in together to save on living expenses, and because our relationship had naturally progressed to that point. With our combined incomes and shared financial values, we accelerated our individual goals while building a partnership based on mutual respect and support. Yet, as my professional and personal life flourished, I could not shake a growing sense of unease about Melanie's situation. My parents' vague responses about college funding and their insistence on controlling her choices echoed my own experience too closely. I felt increasingly torn between respecting their role as parents and ensuring my sister had the opportunities she deserved. What I did not yet realize was that this tension was building toward a breaking point that would force me to choose between family peace and doing what I believed was right for both Melanie and myself. 3 years into my career at Albany Financial, I had accomplished something that once seemed impossible. My student loans were fully paid off 7 years ahead of schedule, according to the standard repayment plan. This milestone coincided with another achievement. I had saved enough for a 20% down payment on a modest home. At 27, I was ready to take the step into homeownership that symbolized true financial independence. Rachel supported my decision, though we agreed it made sense for the house to be in my name, since our relationship, while serious, had not yet reached the marriage stage. "This is your dream," she said. You have worked incredibly hard for this. The house hunting process was both exciting and sobering. Even with my careful saving and solid income, the real estate market limited my options. I focused on smaller homes in up-and-coming neighborhoods, places with potential that might not appeal to buyers with larger budgets or different priorities. After viewing nearly 20 properties, I found a 1970s ranch-style home with 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms in a quiet neighborhood 15 minutes from downtown. The house needed cosmetic updates, but had a new roof and HVAC system solid bones, as my realtor Carol put it. Most importantly, it fit my budget without stretching my finances to a breaking point. The closing process went smoothly, and on a crisp autumn morning, Carol handed me the keys to my first home. Standing in the empty living room afterward, I experienced a profound sense of accomplishment. This house represented not just shelter, but validation of every early morning shift, every skipped night out, every frugal choice that had brought me to this moment. I called Melanie to share the news. Now 18, and in her senior year of high school, she had been accepted to several universities, including her top choice Northwestern University, with a partial scholarship. "I am so proud of you, Jason," she exclaimed. "When can I come see it?" "Anytime," I promised. "There is a bedroom here with your name on it whenever you want to visit." Her excitement contrasted sharply with my parents' lukewarm response when I called them next. "Seems like a lot of responsibility," my father commented. "Hope you know what you are getting into with maintenance costs." That evening, as Rachel and I celebrated with takeout dinner on the floor of my new living room, I received a text from Melanie that would shatter my moment of triumph. "Something bad is happening. Mom and Dad just told me they cannot help with college. They are freaking out about money." The next morning, I called Melanie for details. Her voice was thick with tears as she explained Dad said the college fund Grandma left is gone. They had to use it for something else. And now they are saying they cannot afford to help me at all, even with the state school. This revelation was stunning. My parents had always projected financial stability if not abundance. While they were never generous with me, they had consistently promised Melanie they were saving for her education. "Did they explain what happened to the money?" I asked. "Dad made some bad investment a few years ago," she said, "and they remortgaged the house. They would not give me details, just that there is nothing left." My mind raced. If my grandmother had set up similar funds for both of us, Melanie's portion would have been around $5,000, not enough to cover college expenses, but certainly not nothing. And my parents had supposedly been saving additionally for years. How could it all be gone? 3 days later, I received a call from my father that would turn confusion into confrontation. "Your sister needs help with college," he stated, without preamble. "You have a house now. You need to contribute." The demand caught me off guard. "I am happy to help Melanie," I replied carefully. "But what exactly are you asking?" What followed was a proposal that left me speechless. My father suggested I should sell the house I had just purchased, move back into a rental, and use the proceeds to fund Melanie's education. When I pointed out the financial illogic of paying closing costs twice realtor fees and giving up my mortgage rate in a rising interest environment, he dismissed these concerns. "Family comes first," he insisted. "Your sister needs this more than you need a house right now." I took a deep breath. I agree, family is important, which is why I am willing to help Melanie directly with some expenses. But selling my house makes no financial sense. The conversation deteriorated rapidly. My father accused me of selfishness, of abandoning family responsibility, of thinking only of myself. When I suggested that he and my mother should be transparent about what had happened to Melanie's college fund, he exploded. "How dare you question our parenting? We gave you everything growing up, and this is how you repay us, by judging us when times are tough." I ended the call when it became clear no productive discussion was possible. Immediately afterward, I called Melanie to reassure her. "I will help you figure this out," I promised. "Do not worry about Northwestern. We will make it work somehow." The strain of the situation began affecting my relationship with Rachel. While supportive, she was understandably concerned about the potential financial impact of helping Melanie through 4 years at an expensive university. "I support you helping your sister," she said one evening, as we discussed the situation. "But there needs to be a limit. You cannot sacrifice everything you have built. Her practical perspective was valid, but I felt torn between my love for my sister and my hard-won financial stability. The conflict left me irritable and distracted, causing tension in our usually harmonious relationship. 2 weeks after my father's call, a certified letter arrived at my new home. Opening it, I felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath me. My parents had filed a lawsuit against me, claiming that I had a financial obligation to support Melanie's education given my advantaged financial position and their unexpected hardship. The legal language was cold and formal, but the message was clear. My own parents were suing me for the money to send my sister to college, portraying me as the villain who had abandoned family duty by purchasing a home instead of supporting their dreams. I immediately called Melanie, who answered in tears. "I did not know they were going to do this," she sobbed. "I never asked them to sue you. I would rather go to community college than have this happen." "This is not your fault," I assured her, though my mind was reeling. "Did they tell you anything about this beforehand?" Between tears, she explained that our parents had presented the lawsuit as necessary because I was being stubborn. They had convinced her it was a formality that would force me to do the right thing. That evening, I showed Rachel the legal documents. Her initial shock quickly turned to indignation. "This is extortion," she declared. "They are using the court system to emotionally manipulate you." The betrayal cut deep. My parents had taken my greatest accomplishment, the home I had worked so hard to earn, without their help, and twisted it into evidence of selfishness. They were weaponizing my love for Melanie, placing her in an impossible position between us. Most painful was the realization that they saw my financial independence not as an achievement to be proud of, but as a resource to be exploited. The lawsuit made claims about financial support they had allegedly provided during my education claims I knew to be false. They had rewritten our history to justify their demands, painting themselves as generous parents who deserved compensation for their sacrifices. As I sat in my new living room that night, house keys still feeling unfamiliar in my hand, the celebration of homeownership had been thoroughly poisoned. The space that should have represented freedom now felt like the center of a family war I never wanted to fight. The morning after receiving the lawsuit papers, I called in sick to work for the first time since starting at Albany Financial. With my hands still shaking from shock and anger, I knew I needed legal advice before responding to my parents. A quick online search led me to Alexandra Torres, an attorney specializing in family law, who offered same-day consultations. Her office was modest but professional, with credentials displayed tastefully on walls, painted a calming blue. Alexandra herself was in her 40s with keen eyes that seemed to catalog every detail as I explained my situation. I provided copies of the lawsuit documents along with bank statements showing my complete financial independence throughout college and beyond. "This is unusual," she remarked after reviewing everything. "Parents suing adult children for educational support typically happens in divorce situations where support agreements are in question. Your parents do not seem to have a strong legal case based on what you have shown me." "So they cannot win?" I asked, feeling my first moment of relief since opening that envelope. "The legal merits are questionable," she explained carefully, "but lawsuits like this can cause significant emotional damage regardless of outcome. Courts generally do not force adult children to pay for siblings' education unless there are very specific circumstances." Alexandra advised documenting everything, including the fact that my parents had apparently used Melanie's college fund for other purposes. She also suggested attempting mediation before proceeding to court, both to potentially resolve the issue and to demonstrate good faith efforts if the case did move forward. When I left her office, I felt marginally better about the legal situation, but still devastated by the personal betrayal. Rachel met me for lunch afterward, her presence a steady anchor in the storm. "What can I do?" she asked simply. "Just being here helps," I told her. "I feel like I am living in some bizarre alternate reality where everything I thought I knew about my family is wrong." Kyle, who had remained a close friend since our college days, called that evening after I texted him about the situation. "This is messed up, man," he said bluntly. "What can I do to help?" "I might need a character witness if this actually goes to court," I half-joked. "Consider it done," he replied without hesitation. "I will tell them how you ate ramen for 4 years while working 2 jobs. Meanwhile, I will see if my dad knows any good lawyers in your area." Even Professor Lewis reached out after I emailed him about the situation, offering both moral support and practical advice about documenting my financial independence. "Family disputes are often more about emotion than money," he observed wisely. "Try to remember that when dealing with your parents." With my support system rallying around me, I felt strong enough to take the next step, requesting a meeting with my parents, with both our attorneys present to attempt resolution without court proceedings. Alexandra helped draft the communication, which was formal but non-confrontational, expressing my desire to help Melanie while also protecting myself. My parents agreed to the meeting scheduled at a neutral conference room in Alexandra's office building. The tension in the room was palpable as we gathered around a polished conference table. My father avoided eye contact while my mother looked tearful but determined. Their attorney, a stern-looking man named Mr. Caldwell, began by restating their position that as a financially successful member of the family, I had an obligation to support Melanie's education. Alexandra calmly countered with documentation of my self-sufficiency, pointing out that I had never received financial support for my own education beyond basic living expenses while in high school. She then asked the question I had been burning to ask myself. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller, could you explain what happened to Melanie's college fund from her grandmother, as well as the additional savings you told both your children you were setting aside for education?" My father shifted uncomfortably. We had unexpected financial setbacks. The market crashed. Investments failed. "Could you be more specific?" Alexandra pressed. "According to our client, you told Melanie this fund was approximately $5,000, similar to what he received. That amount, plus even modest regular savings over 18 years, should have accumulated to a significant sum." After several minutes of vague responses and evasions, the truth began to emerge in fragments. My father had used both Melanie's inheritance and their supposed college savings to invest in a friend's business venture that had failed completely. Additionally, they had accumulated significant credit card debt and had indeed refinanced their mortgage not once but twice. The revelation stunned me. My parents had always projected financial stability and lectured both Melanie and me about responsibility, yet they had mismanaged their finances to this degree. My mother began crying quietly as the details emerged, while my father's face reddened with either shame or anger, possibly both. "Why not just tell me the truth?" I asked, breaking protocol by addressing them directly. "I would have helped Melanie anyway. Why sue me? Why lie?" My mother spoke through tears. "We were embarrassed. After all our talk about financial responsibility, we made terrible mistakes. And then you bought a house so successful while we were failing." "So, this is about your pride?" I asked incredulously. "You would rather sue your own son than admit you needed help?" The meeting continued for another hour, with attorneys intervening when emotions ran too high. Eventually, Alexandra proposed a solution. I would establish a direct payment arrangement with Northwestern University to cover part of Melanie's tuition, but my parents would drop the lawsuit and acknowledge in writing that I had no legal obligation for my sister's expenses. As we neared agreement, I requested a moment alone with my parents, without attorneys present. Once the room cleared, I looked directly at them. "I want to help Melanie. I always have. But what you have done here has damaged our relationship in ways that might never heal. You lied to her. You lied about me. You tried to use the legal system to force me to clean up your financial mistakes." My father started to speak, but I continued. "I am not doing this for you. I am doing it for Melanie, because she deserves a chance at education without family drama. But after this is settled, I need time away from both of you." 2 days after the meeting, I received a call from Melanie. I know everything she said. Her voice quiet but steady. Mom broke down and told me what really happened with the money. Why they sued you. Everything. "I am sorry you got caught in the middle of this," I told her. "I am on your side," she replied firmly. "What they did was wrong. I told them I would take out loans and work through school before I would let them keep attacking you like this." Her loyalty brought the first genuine smile I had managed in weeks. "We will figure this out together, Mel. Your education matters to me." News of the lawsuit had spread through our extended family, creating awkward questions and taking sides. Some relatives expressed shock at my parents' actions, while others suggested I should have helped without legal involvement, not understanding I had tried to do exactly that. The mediation ultimately succeeded. My parents dropped the lawsuit in exchange for my commitment to pay 30% of Melanie's tuition directly to Northwestern. The agreement was formalized without requiring court proceedings, though the emotional damage had already been done. In a final twist that cemented my decision to distance myself from my parents, I discovered through Melanie that they had told family members they had won the lawsuit, claiming the court had forced me to pay for her education. This deliberate misrepresentation was the last straw. When Melanie graduated high school that spring, I attended the ceremony and took her to dinner afterward, deliberately scheduling my visit when my parents would be at a family function. She had decided to spend her last summer before college with me, rather than at home, a choice that spoke volumes about how the family dynamics had shifted. As she moved her essentials into my guest room, which we spent a weekend decorating to her taste, she looked around with a mixture of sadness and hope. "I never thought our family would end up like this," she said. "Family is complicated," I replied, thinking of the friends who had supported me through this ordeal. "Sometimes the people who treat you most like family are not the ones you were born to." The lawsuit was dismissed, but the fracture it created in our family might never fully heal. Yet amid the pain, a new understanding had formed between Melanie and me, a bond strengthened through adversity and built on mutual respect rather than obligation. 1 year has passed since the lawsuit was dismissed. The seasons have cycled through their changes, bringing with them a gradual healing that feels like learning to walk again after an injury. The acute pain has subsided, replaced by occasional twinges of sadness, when certain memories surface unexpectedly. My house has become more than just a financial achievement. After Melanie spent the summer with me before starting at Northwestern, the space transformed from simply my residence to our sanctuary. The guest room still holds some of her belongings for holiday visits, decorated in the blues and greens she loves, a permanent reminder that she always has a place here. Melanie has thrived during her freshman year, making the Dean's List her first semester, while balancing part-time work at the university library. We talk weekly, our conversations no longer shadowed by family drama, but focused on her classes, new friends, and occasional homesickness that has nothing to do with our parents and everything to do with missing our time together last summer. "College is so different from what I expected," she told me during our last video call. "But in a good way. I feel like I am discovering who I really am, without anyone's expectations weighing me down." Hearing the confidence in her voice validates every dollar I have contributed to her education. The financial arrangement has been smoother than expected, with payments going directly to the university bursar as planned. Melanie has secured additional scholarships for her sophomore year, reducing the burden on both of us. My support system has evolved into something resembling a chosen family. Rachel and I have deepened our relationship, working through the stress the lawsuit placed on our partnership. Kyle visits whenever business brings him to town, always bringing ridiculous housewarming gifts, because you need at least one thing in this place that you did not research for 6 months before buying. Professor Lewis and his wife have become regular dinner guests, their wisdom providing perspective when I struggle with lingering resentment. 6 months after the lawsuit concluded, my mother reached out via email, a tentative olive branch extending from her direction alone. The message was brief, but contained something I had never heard from either parent: an apology. She acknowledged the harm caused, though stopped short of taking full responsibility, citing the stress of financial hardship as a mitigating factor. I responded civilly, but maintained boundaries, agreeing to occasional updates about Melanie, but making it clear that rebuilding trust would require time and consistent effort on their part. My father has remained distant, his pride apparently preventing him from acknowledging the damage his actions caused. The house itself has evolved with me, small improvements accumulating over time. Rachel helped paint the living room a warm sage green, replacing the clinical white left by previous owners. The backyard now features a modest vegetable garden, a weekend project that provides both produce and the simple satisfaction of nurturing growth. These changes reflect my shifting perspective on what makes a house a home, something beyond the financial milestone it once represented. Looking back at my journey from that 16-year-old boy taking his first job at Harmon's Bakery to the homeowner and professional I am today, I recognize how each challenge, Each early morning shift and late night study session contributed to building not just financial independence, but emotional resilience. The path was harder than it needed to be, certainly harder than it is for many with supportive families, but the lessons learned along the way have proven invaluable. Financial independence, I have discovered, is about more than money. It is about the freedom to make choices based on your own values rather than external pressures. It is about creating security that cannot be threatened when relationships become strained. Most importantly, it is about building the capacity to help others from a place of genuine choice rather than obligation. My relationship with Rachel has deepened through this experience. Initially concerned about the financial implications of helping Melanie, she has come to understand that my commitment to my sister reflects values. She shares loyalty, responsibility, and the importance of education. We are discussing longer-term plans approaching the future with the same careful consideration we bring to our finances. One unexpected outcome of this journey has been the establishment of a small scholarship I created at my former high school. Working with Mrs. Patterson, who is still the guidance counselor there, we developed criteria, focusing on students demonstrating financial independence and responsibility. The scholarship is modest, covering books and supplies rather than full tuition, but represents my desire to ease the path for others walking a similar road. Watching Melanie develop into an independent, thoughtful young woman has been the greatest reward. Unlike my experience, she knows she has unconditional support, allowing her to take healthy risks and pursue her passions without fear of failure. Our weekly conversations often turn philosophical as she processes her own relationship with our parents, seeking neither to villainize them completely nor excuse their actions. I understand they made mistakes, she reflected recently, but understanding does not mean I have to repeat them. The bitterness I once felt has gradually transformed into something closer to understanding. My parents, for all their flaws, were shaped by their own experiences and limitations. Their failures provided me with powerful lessons about the parent partner and person I want to be. The inheritance they ultimately gave me was not financial, but instructional, teaching me precisely what patterns to avoid repeating. Today, standing in the kitchen of the home I fought to keep, I recognize that the most valuable things I own cannot be taken away through lawsuits or family pressure. The work ethic I developed at 16, the resilience forged through, challenged the capacity to build genuine connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation. These are the true assets I have accumulated. Sometimes life's most important lessons come from unexpected teachers. In my case, the painful lawsuit, brought by my own parents, ultimately reinforced what I had always intuitively understood, that true wealth exists in our character, our relationships, and our ability to weather storms with grace. The house around me is just wood and plaster. The home I have created extends far beyond these walls, to the community of support I have built and the values I choose to embody. As I look toward the future, I carry this knowledge forward. Sometimes the people who should love you the most can hurt you the deepest. But this pain need not define your story. We can build beautiful lives from broken beginnings. We can create families of choice when families of origin fail us. And sometimes the most powerful response to those who would tear us down is simply to continue building one brick at a time the life we know we deserve. I built my first house with lumber and nails, but my true home, the place where my spirit dwells in peace, was built with courage, perseverance, and the unwavering belief that we all deserve to create our own definitions of success and family. If this story resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to stand up to family pressure to protect your own future? Did you have to work your way through school or life challenges without family support? I would love to hear your experiences. Do not forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear more real-life stories of overcoming adversity. Remember, your path is yours alone to walk, but knowing others have navigated similar terrain can make the journey feel less solitary. Thank you for listening to my story.